I used to think every road in Kentucky looked the same after midnight. Miles of blacktop, tunnels of pine, the kind of darkness that made your headlights feel too small for the world around you. But that was before the night the highway turned on me, before the dead started watching from the tree line, before the rules that kept me alive became the only thing separating me from whatever was trying to pull me under. If you're listening to this, understand something from the start. I'm not telling this story because I want attention, or because I'm trying to sell you some ghost tale to pass the time. I'm telling you because it happened, because it changed everything, and because the roads you think you know might not belong to the living after dark. The night this began, I was already running on empty, emotionally more than anything else. Bills stacked in my truck's passenger seat, my daughter's school pictures clipped to the sun visor, and a quiet weight in my chest that never went away, no matter how many miles I drove. That's the thing they don't tell you about trucking through Appalachia. The road is lonely even before the supernatural gets involved. It gives you too much time to think about what you should have done differently in life. Too much time to wonder how everything slipped through your fingers. My name is Logan Mercer. I've been a long-haul driver since I was 21, and I've survived more close calls than I care to admit. Ice storms, brake failures, mountain curves carved by a sadist. But nothing prepared me for November 18th of last year. Nothing prepared me for the highway that shouldn't have existed, or the men who shouldn't have been standing on it. I remember the moment it began as clearly as I remember the name of the first man I ever saw die in a mining accident. I was heading south on KY-15, wipers smearing a cold drizzle across my windshield, when my dispatch radio chimed. It wasn't the normal beep. It was a tone I'd never heard before, sharp, metallic, like the sound steel makes when it bends past its breaking point. When I answered, Marilyn's voice came through flat and clipped. "Logan, I've got an emergency assignment. You're the closest driver, high priority freight. Must be delivered tonight." I didn't question her at first. Freight goes missing, shipments get delayed, companies panic. That's normal. But something in her voice sounded wrong, strained, like she was trying not to let something slip. "What kind of run?" I asked. There was a pause. Too long. Then, "Night route protocol. You'll receive instructions at the hazard depot." Night route protocol. The phrase landed in my chest with a cold heaviness I still can't describe. I'd heard rumors about night routes back when I first started driving. Stories told in the back corners of diners by the old-timers whose hands shook from years of white-knuckling mountain roads. Stories they'd whisper only after the owner turned the closed sign and locked the door. Stories about roads that shouldn't exist and deliveries that weren't supposed to be made by living drivers. I never believed any of it. I believed in bad maintenance, bad weather, and bad luck. But I said yes because Marilyn offered 4 times my standard rate. 4 times. Enough money to cover the mortgage payment I'd missed last month. Enough to keep my daughter from hearing the word eviction while she packed her school backpack. That's the thing about desperation. It makes you accept terms you never would have touched otherwise. I arrived at the depot at 9:31 p.m. The entire place felt off, the kind of off that crawls under your skin before you even know why. The sodium lights flickered overhead, turning the mist into a copper haze. The parking lot was empty except for a single flatbed and a white industrial van. No crew, no chatter, none of the usual noise a depot makes even on a slow night. Just silence. Then I saw him, a tall man with a stiff posture and a gray beard that looked carved from stone. He stood under the loading bay canopy like he'd been waiting for me. He didn't wave or nod. He just stared. "You're Mercer," he said. "Logan, yeah. Dispatch said you have instructions." He handed me a manila envelope that looked older than the depot itself. The edges were worn soft from years of handling. The ink on the front had faded to a muted blue. There were no labels, no corporate stamps, just 5 words written in tight block letters. Night Route Protocol 224. My stomach clenched. "What is this?" His eyes held mine for a moment too long. "The rules," he said. "Follow them exactly. Don't improvise. Don't stop. Don't talk to anyone on the road." "Anyone? Anyone?" I felt a cold draft slide across the back of my neck, as if someone had walked behind me. But when I turned, no one was there. The depot was empty except for the van and my rig. The man spoke again. "Your load is already secured. Do not open your trailer under any circumstances, and when you reach the highway, stay in your lane. Don't look at the tree line. If something tries to signal you, ignore it." I forced a laugh. "You make it sound like this road is haunted." "It's not haunted," he said quietly. "Haunted things still remember they were once alive." He stepped back, and for the first time since arriving, I realized I didn't know his name. I hadn't asked, and something deep inside me whispered that he didn't have one anymore. Not one that mattered. I opened the envelope in my cab. There were 8 rules neatly typed on a single sheet of paper. I won't list them yet, not until you understand what they cost to follow. But I will tell you this. Every single rule was a warning. Every rule had been written in the blood of someone who ignored it. Before I could read them twice, my headlights flickered. The radio crackled on its own, even though I hadn't touched the dial. And from somewhere in the trees behind the depot, I heard the unmistakable sound of shovels striking rock, slow, steady, rhythmic. That was the first moment I felt real fear, the kind that makes your hands sweat and your throat tighten, the kind that tells you you're standing somewhere you were never meant to be. But fear wasn't enough to change what I did next. I needed the money. I needed to keep my daughter's life stable. I needed to believe that all of this was nothing more than an overworked mind hearing shadows in the dark. So I put the truck in gear and pulled out of the depot. And the second my tires touched Highway 224, the temperature in the cab dropped 10 degrees. My breath fogged. The radio settled on a single AM frequency, and a voice from 50 years ago said my name. "Before I take you further down this road with me, if you want more true stories like this, stories that dig into the forgotten corners of America, hit subscribe. It keeps the channel alive, and it tells me this is the kind of story you want more of." The first time I heard my name come through that radio, I nearly slammed the brakes, not because of the voice itself, though it had that grainy analog distortion that only old communications equipment makes, but because whoever said it shouldn't have been able to. It wasn't Marilyn, it wasn't the depot, it wasn't anyone I knew. It was a man's voice, weathered, low, carrying the cadence of someone born and buried in the Kentucky coalfields. "Logan Mercer, Shift 3, report in." My foot froze on the pedal. The road ahead slithered through tall ridges, the mist thickening until it felt like driving through a cold soup. Every instinct screamed to turn around. The human brain has a way of warning you long before logic catches up, and mine was screaming, but I held steady at 38 mph. It took me a moment to realize why that number mattered. Rule 1, the first rule typed neatly on the sheet in my lap, had said maintain a specific speed, a speed that I hadn't yet recited, hadn't fully absorbed because fear had pushed it out of my mind. I eased off the gas until the needle touched the exact number. A chill slid down my spine as the engine settled into a steady hum, almost as if the truck itself approved. The radio crackled again, louder this time. "Shift 3, report. Mercer, do you copy?" The signal dragged out the last word like it was being pulled through gravel. "Who is this?" I said before I could stop myself. The moment the words left my mouth, the radio cut to static so violent it rattled the dashboard. For a half second, it felt like someone had grabbed the frame of the truck and shaken it. Then everything went quiet. Too quiet. I forced myself to breathe. The white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel loosened as I repeated the rules silently. If the man at the depot was right, breaking them wasn't an option, not if I wanted to go home. The highway bent sharply to the right. Trees crowded the edges, their branches reaching over the asphalt like fingers. Shadows shifted in ways that didn't match the sway of the forest. I caught myself glancing toward the tree line and immediately snapped my eyes forward. The rules had been clear about that too. Do not look at the tree line after 10 p.m. I didn't know why, not yet, but something told me the explanation was coming whether I wanted it or not. 5 miles in, the mist thickened into a blanket. My high beams punched into it but couldn't push it aside. The road became a faint gray ribbon barely visible beyond 10 yards. And somewhere in that whiteout, shapes began forming. At first they looked like parts of the landscape, stumps, boulders, folds of fog. Then one of them moved. A person. Standing on the shoulder. No reflective gear, no flashlight, no vehicle nearby. Just a figure, unmoving, head tilted slightly toward the road. A second shape appeared 20 yards behind him, then a third, and a fourth. I swallowed hard. I didn't need to check the rules to know what this meant. Hitchhikers were explicitly listed, and the warning beneath that rule, the part written in smaller print, had said something that still didn't sit right in my head. They will look alive. The first figure stepped closer to the road, and my headlights caught his boots. Heavy, dust-caked, the kind men wore into coal seams before mechanized equipment made manual picks obsolete. His pants were old canvas, faded and stiff. The jacket looked like something out of a 1960s mining archive. But it wasn't the clothes that froze my blood. It was the fact that when the light hit him, the shadow he should have cast wasn't there. The beam pushed past him as if he were barely occupying the same space. The second figure lifted an arm, palms outward. The universal sign, stop. I kept my eyes forward and tightened my hands on the wheel. Rule 2 pulsed in my mind like a heartbeat. Do not pick up anyone on the road. The third figure stepped forward. They were close enough now that I could make out their faces, or what was left of them. Coal smeared across their skin, so thick it looked fused into their pores. Eyes sunken, cheeks hollow, lips cracked like old leather. All of them watched my truck pass with an intensity that made every hair on my body lift. Then came the sound, not from the radio, not from the engine, from the trailer. At first it was faint, almost easy to dismiss as shifting freight, but it grew heavier, more deliberate. Metallic scraping, impact, gravelly voices murmuring in a rhythm older than anything recorded on a studio microphone. Someone or something was inside my cargo. The temptation to check the rearview mirror was strong. Too strong, but the rules were clear about that too. Keep eyes forward until the first major turn off the highway. Mirrors distort things on this route, create reflections that aren't yours. I didn't dare test that warning. Around mile marker 7, the hitchhikers stopped appearing. The mist began thinning. For a moment, I let myself believe the worst had passed, that whatever I'd seen was an isolated stretch, the kind of supernatural hotspot old drivers whispered about and then avoided like a curse. But the radio crackled again. This time the voice was clearer. Mercer left the seam early, didn't clock out. A chill slid beneath my skin. There was no way that voice should have known my name. And the way it said, "clock out," that wasn't dispatch jargon. That was mining language, deep core slang used before shift cards and digital check-ins replaced handwritten ledgers. "Identify yourself," I said. Static, then softly, almost like a breath whispering through the trees. "You shouldn't have taken this road, son." My breath caught, because that voice wasn't just any voice. It belonged to a man I hadn't heard in 12 years. A man buried somewhere outside Harlan County in a grave I'd visited twice a year until I couldn't afford the gas anymore. My father. He'd driven the mines his whole life. He'd worked deep shafts before regulations improved. He'd told me stories once, stories about voices echoing through tunnels long after the workers had gone home, stories about collapse victims who were never pulled out, stories about seams that were sealed too quickly. But he never talked about night routes, not once. I listened hard for his voice again, desperate for anything familiar, anything human. Instead, the radio cut to a high-pitched frequency that made my teeth ache. The mist thinned just enough for me to see the next sign up ahead. Highway 2 on 24, no services next 30 miles. But what stopped me cold wasn't the text. It was the graffiti sprayed over it in faded red paint. "Turn back before they notice you're breathing." The letters ran downward as if someone's hand had been shaking violently. I couldn't tell if the paint was old or if it had been put there 5 minutes ago. I drove under that sign like crossing under a blade. 30 seconds later, something stepped onto the asphalt directly ahead of me. Not on the shoulder this time, on the road itself. It wasn't walking, it wasn't running. It was standing in the dead center of my lane, waiting for me. A man in a miner's uniform covered in coal dust down to the fingernails. Headlamp cracked and flickering on his helmet. His chest rose and fell like someone breathing after a long shift. But when the beam from my headlights passed through him, right through him, I understood exactly what the rules meant by "they will look alive." The living don't flicker in and out of existence. The living don't turn their heads without moving their bodies. And the living don't smile like that. Just as I braced for impact, certain I was about to plow right through him, he opened his mouth. But the sound that came out wasn't a voice. It was the unmistakable shriek of metal collapsing underground. The sound that blasted from the miner's open mouth wasn't human. It wasn't even animal. It was the exact pitch a steel support beam makes the moment it buckles in a collapsing shaft. The sound my father once said you never forget. The sound that meant you had 10 seconds to run, or a mountain would bury you alive. That scream hit me like a physical force. The windshield vibrated. My chest tightened as if someone had hooked a chain through my rib cage and pulled. My ears rang. For a split second, my fingers froze, useless, and I realized I wasn't breathing. Then instinct took over. I slammed both hands back onto the wheel and held my speed. The rules were clear. Do not brake, do not swerve. Maintain the exact pace. Any deviation was an invitation to something I didn't want to meet. The miner stood still as a statue until the hood of my truck touched him, and then he wasn't there. No impact, no noise, no smear of coal dust. He simply vanished, swallowed into the mist like he'd never existed at all. But the scream he'd unleashed stayed inside my ears. echoing through nerves I didn't know could hurt. My breathing turned shallow. Sweat trickled down my spine despite the cold. I felt something inside me shift, not physically but mentally. An edge of disbelief snapped. Fear made room for something colder. Realization. This wasn't random. Someone had guided me here. Something wanted me on this road. And I was beginning to think it wasn't the living. The highway leveled out ahead. The mist thinned just enough for me to see maybe 30 yards. As my body tried to settle, the radio lit up again. A crackle, a faint hiss, then a woman's voice. Mercer. Shift 3 marked absent. Her tone wasn't threatening. It wasn't even emotional. It was bureaucratic, like someone reading data off a clipboard. Another voice cut in, a man, deeper, older. Check the ledger. He clocked in at 21:15. Negative, the woman said. No signature. Then he's not alive, the man answered. The words hit harder than the scream had. Not alive. They were talking about me. I leaned closer to the radio, even though I didn't want to, my knuckles whitening around the wheel. Confirm, the woman said. Is Mercer still breathing? A third voice, soft and distant, replied, For now. My throat tightened. I reached blindly for the rule sheet, fingers brushing the folded paper, as if touching it could anchor me back to reality. That was when the trailer door slammed from the inside. One deafening bang. The entire rig shuddered, jerking slightly to the left. I corrected immediately, forcing the wheel straight. The speedometer flickered for a heartbeat, 1 mile under the required speed, before climbing back into alignment. I whispered under my breath without meaning to, Stay still, stay still, stay still. Another slam, then 3 more in rapid succession, as if someone or several someones inside were pounding to get out, or pounding because they already knew what was out here with us. The highway curved, a steep right bend with a cluster of black pine trees, leaning over the shoulder. Something flickered between the trunks, pale shapes shifting too fast to be human. I did not look. I locked my gaze on the dashed line like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to the living. My father's warning earlier through the radio repeated in my mind like a broken prayer. You shouldn't have taken this road, son. My father had been dead 12 years, and somehow he knew I was here. A gust of cold air swept through the cab, not through the vents. Through the sealed door seams, my breath fogged instantly. Then something touched my neck, light as a fingertip, but freezing like the moment before frostbite claims skin. I jerked forward, heart slamming into the back of my throat. A voice whispered right behind my ear, close enough that I could feel the breath or whatever passed for breath. You're going the wrong way. I snapped my head toward the passenger seat. Empty, nothing but an old thermos, a worn map, and the envelope with the rules. But someone was still there. I could feel it. When you've driven long enough, you learn the difference between being alone and being watched. And right then, I was being watched by something that didn't blink. The whisper came again, softer, stretched out like a rope dragging through ash. Turn around. No, I muttered, pulse pounding. I follow the rules. The whisper stopped instantly, like cutting power to a machine. Then a long, low sigh exhaled across the back of my neck. I gripped the wheel harder, refusing to look in the mirrors, refusing to acknowledge anything but asphalt. The road narrowed ahead as I reached a stretch where the hills pressed close on both sides. The mist warped into strange shapes, tall, bending outlines that disappeared when I blinked. My headlights flickered once, twice, then everything went black. No light, no road, No reflection. Nothing. The truck continued moving. At least I could feel the vibration of the tires, but I saw nothing. My hands stayed locked in place because if I moved an inch, I knew I'd die. Seconds stretched. A suffocating silence settled around me. Even the trailer had gone quiet, as if whatever was inside was holding its breath too. And then, in the darkness, hundreds of faint lights appeared on either side of the truck. Tiny white-blue glows. Headlamps. Old mining headlamps. I couldn't see the faces behind them, but I felt them. Rows and rows of miners walking parallel to my truck, matching my speed perfectly, heads all turned toward the cab. Watching, judging, waiting. One stepped closer, so close I could see the reflection of my own terrified eyes in his cracked lens. His mouth opened wider than a mouth should, and I braced for another scream. Instead, he said in a voice that sounded like gravel sliding down a shaft, "They smell you." My stomach twisted. Who? A beat of silence. The ones who don't follow rules. And just like that, the lights vanished. The headlights blinked back on. The road returned beneath me as if nothing had happened at all. I sucked in a long breath, my lungs burning. The rule sheet slid off the seat and fell against my leg. It felt like a reminder, a threat, a lifeline. The radio let out a soft crackle. Then a single voice spoke, clearer than before, as if the signal had stabilized. "Stay in your lane, Mercer, they're already looking." "Who?" I whispered. The voice didn't hesitate. "The ones who still think you belong to them." I didn't understand what that meant. Not then. Not yet. But a cold certainty began coiling in my chest. Someone knew I was here. Someone expected me. And something was waiting to see whether I followed every rule or broke just one. Because breaking one meant the road would decide I wasn't breathing anymore. What I didn't know, and what I would learn soon enough, is that the dead weren't the only ones out here. The living were worse. When Highway 224 finally straightened out into a long, empty stretch, I thought I'd earned a moment to breathe. Not to relax, because I knew better by then, but to at least let my shoulders drop from around my ears. The road ahead faded into a bluish haze that looked almost peaceful compared to what I'd already seen. But that calm wasn't real. It was the kind of quiet you get before a roof caves in, the kind my father warned me about when he talked about the mines. When it goes that still, he'd say, the mountain's holding its breath. So was I. I kept the truck steady at the exact pace the rule sheet demanded. My foot trembled slightly on the pedal, not from the cold, but from the lingering echo of the dead walking beside my truck only minutes earlier. My mind kept circling back to their warning. They smell you. I didn't know who they were yet, but every instinct told me I'd meet them soon. The mist rolled across the road in slow patches, thinning enough to show the faint outline of the hills surrounding me. They rose like dark walls pressed close to the highway, steep enough that any sound coming from the slopes would slide right down into the asphalt like it was being funneled toward me. And sure enough, it did. Somewhere up the ridge, a rhythmic thumping began. At first it sounded like someone striking wet earth with a shovel, heavy, deliberate, methodical. Thump, thump, thump. The vibration crawled down the hillside and into the road. The steering wheel trembled under my hands. Then voices joined in, not screaming, not chanting, working, men working. Their voices carried the same tone I'd heard earlier from the trailer. Deep, rough harmonies of miners keeping time as they hammered through coal seams. I could almost see them. Lines of workers in hard hats moving like shadows carved from soot. But these weren't the same men who'd walked beside my truck. Their voices were deeper, angrier, not mournful like those trapped souls who seemed to pity me. No, these sounded like men who'd never stopped being furious about how they died. Somewhere between their echoes, another noise surfaced. Softer, stranger. It was the sound of metal being dragged over stone. A low screech, long and unbroken, like something huge was crawling across the ridge above me. The hairs on my arms stood up. I didn't look up. I didn't dare. The rules didn't mention looking at ridge lines, but something in my gut told me they would have if whoever wrote them knew what roamed up there. The road dipped slightly. I adjusted the wheel, my hands stiff and cold. I felt sweat forming at the back of my neck, even though the cab was freezing. My breath fogged the air again, the temperature dropping harder now. Small ice crystals formed along the bottom corner of the windshield. Then the radio buzzed. Not static, not voices from long-dead dispatchers. This was something else. A slow scrape across the frequency, like someone dragging a steel hook along the wires. I turned the volume down on instinct, but the noise only grew louder. The radio knob stopped responding, frozen in place. The frequency light flickered between numbers, scanning automatically through stations that didn't exist. I gritted my teeth and kept driving. "Just stick to the rules," I muttered. "Stick to the rules, Mercer." The scraping stopped abruptly. Then a voice came through, quiet, strained, as if someone were whispering through a cracked respirator mask. "You're being followed." My heart dropped into my stomach. I recognized the voice, not because they'd spoken earlier tonight, but because I'd heard that tone before, years ago, sitting at a kitchen table across from a man who'd once been the toughest miner in Harlan County, a man whose lungs collapsed on him when the mine he worked in cut corners one too many times. The voice belonged to my father, but it wasn't how I remembered him. This voice was thinner, raspier, strained by decades of breathing dust he never survived. "Dad?" I whispered before I could stop myself. Silence answered. Then the voice repeated, softer this time, "You're being followed." I glanced at the side mirror, then immediately snapped my eyes back to the road. The rules, the damn rules. I knew better. Mirrors distort things on night routes, but I couldn't help it. Something primal wanted to know what was behind me, and even though I didn't look again, I could feel it. A weight on the road, a shift in the airflow behind the trailer, like something had merged into my lane without making a sound. I forced myself to focus on the asphalt ahead. My heart hammered so loud, I thought whatever was behind me could hear it. "Dad," I whispered, "what's behind me?" Static hissed from the radio, soft at first, then harsher, until the air in the cab vibrated with it. "Don't talk," the voice managed. Then it cut out completely. The radio went dead. The silence that followed was suffocating. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my fingertips hurt. Every instinct screamed at me to break the rules and look behind the truck to confirm what my skin already knew. But I didn't, because some part of me understood the truth. If I looked, I'd see something I wasn't supposed to survive. Another mile crawled beneath my tires, then another. The road was a straight shot now, nothing but blacktop and the faint reflection of my headlights bouncing off the mist ahead. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the trailer groaned. Not the normal metal settling. This was alive. A long, bending creak like something inside shifted its weight, pressed against the steel walls. My mouth went dry. Something in that trailer wasn't just riding along. It was waking up. I could hear it moving now, slow, purposeful, like it had all the time in the world, like it knew I couldn't stop. The walls of the trailer flexed outward by half an inch, barely visible but enough to warp the reflection on my side mirror. My breath caught. The rules, the goddamn rules. Don't look, don't stop, don't speak, don't break the cadence. I swallowed hard and forced myself to keep driving. Then the first voice spoke through the trailer wall. Not a whisper, a man's voice. Calm, low, almost conversational. "You're late, driver." A cold shock shot through my body. I stared ahead, every muscle in my body locking into place. Another voice joined the first. "You weren't supposed to stop earlier." My pulse spiked. I hadn't stopped. Not tonight, not yet. Then a third voice spoke, older, gravel-throated, echoing through metal that shouldn't carry sound like that. He broke the rules once already. That's why they're coming. The trailer walls flexed again, and this time something pressed outward. A handprint, human-shaped, coal-black, smearing across the steel from the inside. I nearly lost control of the wheel. My father's voice had warned me. "They smell you." Then, from somewhere in the cargo darkness, a fourth voice whispered, so close it sounded like it was leaning right against my ear. "They've been waiting for you, Mercer." I didn't dare look at the trailer again. That coal-black handprint on the steel burned into my peripheral vision like an afterimage of lightning, and though the metal flexed back into place, the faint outline stayed, faded, but present, as if whoever pressed their hand there wanted me to know they were still inside, still listening, still waiting. I tried steadying my breathing, but it kept breaking in my chest like waves slamming against rock. That voice, the final voice from the trailer calling my name, hadn't sounded furious or tortured like the others. It sounded expectant, almost patient, like something that knew I couldn't outrun it, no matter how fast or far I drove. The mist began drifting across the road again in thin sheets. Not the gentle kind you see early in the morning, but heavy, unnatural, curling thick around the sides of my truck as though it had intention. The headlights caught the edges of it and turned it into glowing gray walls closing in on me. Then I saw them, not people, not miners, shapes, tall ones, standing deep in the tree line on both sides of the road, just beyond the reach of the headlights. They weren't moving. They weren't waving me down. They weren't even walking. They were watching. At first, they were silhouettes, thin, elongated figures with shoulders that sloped too far forward and arms that hung too low, almost to their knees. Their outlines flickered in a way nothing living does, shifting between solid and translucent like heat distortion. I didn't know if they were part of the dead workforce or something older, something far less human. Whatever they were, they didn't blink. The truck's engine growled as it climbed a shallow incline. The road bent slightly left, and for a few precious seconds, the mist parted enough for me to see the moonlit ridge above. A long shadow moved across the top of the hill, smooth, gliding, enormous, larger than any person had a right to be. Another one followed, and another, each one making no sound. A chill tightened around my spine. So deep and instinctive it felt like someone was grabbing it with a fist. The radio crackled again. Just a single burst of static, loud enough to rattle the cup holder. Then a voice whispered, "Don't acknowledge them." This voice wasn't my father's. It was rougher, deeper, with a hoarseness that suggested collapsed lungs, or lungs that had filled with coal dust long ago. I'd never heard it before. "Who is this?" I whispered. Silence, then barely audible. "They're not from the mines." My skin prickled. "What are they?" The answer came as nothing more than a breath across the speakers. "Older." That word landed like a hammer in my chest. Older meant before the coal camps, before the miners, before the first seams were cut into these mountains. Whatever watched me from the tree line belonged to something with roots deeper than the living or the dead. The mist closed in again, swallowing the silhouettes. The road dipped sharply. The trailer moaned behind me. Low, heavy, shifting weight that didn't make sense. The cargo was supposed to be standard industrial equipment, strapped down tight. Nothing should have been able to move like that. Unless it wasn't equipment anymore. The rule sheet crinkled under my knee as I shifted in the seat. I grabbed it with one hand, needing a reminder, needing something stable to cling to. 8 rules, 8 lifelines. I scanned them quickly. Maintain exact speed. Don't pick up hitchhikers. Don't stop between certain mile markers. Tune the radio to AM 9 and 20. Don't speak to certain figures. Don't look at the tree line. Take the upper bridge. Drive 3 miles past the drop point before turning. I hadn't broken any, not yet. I kept repeating that to myself, forcing the words into my bones like reinforcement beams. Ahead, the fog thinned again, revealing a new sign. Mile 12. My pulse jumped. This was where the rules got stricter. I remembered the man at the depot warning me, if you make it past 12, don't stop for anything. Not weather, not mechanical issues, not even if you think you're dying. The memory replayed in my mind now with sharp detail. His eyes had gone flat as he said it, flat like he'd seen someone fail. The trailer struck the hitch suddenly, one heavy impact that jolted my entire cab. I clenched the wheel. Not stopping, I muttered through my teeth. Not stopping. Another hit, then 3 in quick succession, and then footsteps. Slow, heavy, not outside. Above me, on the truck roof. The first one landed like a boot print, the second like the drag of a heel. Someone or something walked the length of my cab. Roof to trailer, deliberate, measured, matching my speed exactly. My breath hitched. Everything inside me screamed to look up, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. I kept my eyes forward, glued to the faint white line ahead. Then something crouched. The roof dipped under its weight. Metal groaned. A cold shadow fell across the windshield from above, blotting out part of my headlights. I didn't know how tall it was, but whatever crouched above me had limbs long enough to reach the edges of the cab from a single position. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my teeth. Then it leaned lower, so low that the indentation shifted above my head. The radio blared suddenly, so loud I jumped. A voice barked through it like a drill sergeant. Do not talk to it. The creature on the roof froze. Silence swallowed the cab. The radio screamed the warning again. Do not talk to it, Mercer. Drive. The thing above me exhaled. A long, hollow breath that sounded like coal dust blowing down a dead shaft. Then with no sound at all, it vanished. Just gone. No leap. No sound of movement. One moment it weighed down the roof. The next, the pressure lifted like it had been erased from existence. I let out a shaky breath. The road straightened again as I approached mile marker 13. I forced myself to refocus. My right hand trembled as I wiped sweat off my face, even though the air was cold enough to sting my nostrils. I didn't know what that creature was, only that it wasn't one of the dead miners. It wasn't even part of the workforce trapped inside the trailer. It was something else, something older, as the voice said. The radio crackled again, calmer this time, though the voice still held strain. You're close to the point where the road decides. My mouth went dry. Decides what? The voice didn't hesitate. Whether you're staying among the living. The words settled over me like dirt dropping onto a coffin lid. "And if it decides wrong," I whispered, "you don't get to leave." My throat tightened. "Who the hell are you?" A faint laugh, broken, exhausted, echoed through the static. "Just someone who didn't make it." The line went dead, and then the mist parted ahead, revealing something the rule sheet hadn't warned me about. A second vehicle, a truck like mine, parked sideways across the road, hazards blinking, empty. Driver's door wide open. Inside, a logbook lay on the ground, pages fluttering in the wind. I didn't need to read the name on it, because I already knew. I had seen that name on the list the foreman of the dead, whispered on the radio earlier. Shift 3 marked absent. The abandoned truck blocked almost the entire road. 40 feet of cold steel sitting sideways across both lanes. Emergency lights pulsing red in the mist, like a warning heartbeat. For a moment, I thought the fog itself reacted to those flashes, stretching toward the light like fingers drawn to warmth. But maybe it was my eyes playing tricks. Or maybe on this road, nothing was a trick. I couldn't stop. Every rule screamed that at me, but if I approached too fast, too slow, or too bright, whatever had happened to this truck's driver might decide to happen to me next. The rule sheet crinkled under my knee again. I didn't even need to look at it anymore. The rhythm of those 8 warnings had burned themselves into my mind. Maintain speed, don't swerve, don't stop. Watch the road as if your life depends on it, because it does. I eased forward, the truck rumbling beneath me. As I crept closer to the abandoned rig, the details sharpened. The hazards blinked weakly, their battery dying. The hood was dented inward, not from a crash, but from something striking it from the outside. Something heavy, something strong. The driver's door swung back and forth on its hinge, slamming lightly with each gust of wind. And then I saw the name stenciled on the cab, Harper, a name the radio had listed earlier, a name the voices had called absent. Harper was one of the miners, or one of the drivers, or both. No, the name had a memory attached to it. I'd heard it once at a diner counter years ago, a man in oil-stained jeans, heavy boots, and a smile that didn't match the shadows under his eyes. Harper talked about taking weird night hauls back when he still drove. Said the highway felt too empty to be empty. He'd quit trucking that year, or so he said. But the truck in front of me told another story. I coasted forward, 30 yards, 20, 10. The cab door finally swung wide enough for my headlights to illuminate the driver's seat. Empty, at least empty of anything living. Black streaks coated the fabric, coal dust, thick as if a miner sat inside long enough to leave the outline of a body. But no shape remained, just the residue of something that didn't belong in daylight. My stomach tightened. Harper wasn't here, but something else was. As my headlights washed over the trailer of Harper's truck, I noticed 4 deep gouges carved along the aluminum siding, 4 parallel lines, evenly spaced like claws. Not the short, frantic scratches people make while trying to escape. These were deliberate, long, gliding smoothly across metal. My breath stilled. Something had dragged itself across Harper's truck, something that didn't care whether Harper was inside or not. I kept my speed steady, nudging slightly onto the shoulder to squeeze between Harper's rig and the guardrail. I held my breath as the metal of my trailer scraped the barrier by half an inch, sending sparks into the mist. The moment I passed the abandoned truck, everything changed. The hazard stopped blinking. The radio turned to dead silence. The mist parted in a clean line, like a curtain pulled aside, and the forest went quiet. Too quiet, Not silent because sound was absent, silent because sound was being held back. Something in the air shifted, pressure, like a presence had stepped onto the road. Then the footsteps started again, not on the roof like before, behind me. Slow, heavy impacts like someone walking down the middle of the highway, matching my exact pace. At first, I refused to look. Rules or not, my instincts knew that turning around wasn't survival, it was surrender. But as the footsteps grew louder, a whisper rode them forward. "You shouldn't have come this far alone." My father's voice again, except this time deeper, tired, more distant, as if he were shouting through miles of rock. "Dad," I whispered under my breath, throat tightening. "What's happening?" The radio flared to life so violently I jumped. Static. Then his voice came through clearly. "You're in the convergence zone." I swallowed. "What does that mean?" The answer chilled me in a way even the dead miners hadn't. "Where the living and the dead decide who you belong to." A cold draft swept through the cab. Behind me, the footsteps stopped. Then something new replaced them. Breathing. Steady. Too steady, like it didn't need to draw air but mimicked the pattern of a human chest, rising and falling out of memory alone. A presence hovered just beyond the trailer, pacing the rear bumper. I didn't need to see it. I felt it. It waited for a mistake, a swerve, a drop in speed, a glance towards the mirror. It needed only one crack in the rules to pour itself through. Ahead, the road bent again, a long right curve. The mist broke open slightly, exposing the black silhouette of the mountain. Moonlight glinted off something on the asphalt 100 yards ahead. At first, it looked like debris. Then I saw fabric, clothes, a flannel shirt, boots, a miner's helmet, laid neatly in the center of the lane, as if someone had placed them there intentionally, a message, a warning, or bait. I didn't slow. The rules commanded it, and fear reinforced it. I kept speed. I kept my eyes forward. But as my headlights washed over those empty clothes, something happened that nearly made me break every rule in the book. The clothes moved, not from wind, not from the draft of my passing truck. They folded inward, crumpling, compressing, as if an invisible body had just climbed into them. The boots dragged across the asphalt for one heartbeat, scraping sparks into the air. Then the shape inside stood. A man-shaped shadow entirely made of coal dust rose in front of me. No face, no features, just a hollow outline. I couldn't stop, couldn't swerve. My hands locked onto the wheel, refusing to disobey the rules. The coal figure lifted its head, and a single word vibrated through my skull as I passed through it, my truck slicing through its form like cutting smoke. "Driver." The cold that entered my cab didn't dissipate for a full 10 seconds. Then the radio snapped back on. A voice I'd never heard said, "They're testing you. It means you're close." "Close to what?" I whispered. "To the ones who wrote the rules." The mist thinned enough to reveal the next sign up ahead. Service exit closed. Road ends in 9 miles. But someone had scratched new words under it. "No, it doesn't." My hands went numb around the wheel. The radio crackled once more. This time, the voice wasn't warning me. It was anticipating me. "Keep driving, Mercer. They've been waiting for you." And for the first time since the route began, I felt the truth deep in my bones. Whatever waited up ahead knew my name long before I ever knew this road existed. I learned that truth at the start of mile marker 17, when the asphalt began changing under my headlights. Not cracking, not warping, changing. The painted white line, the one that had been my lifeline all night, began to fade, Not like paint wearing thin, but like it was being pulled beneath the surface, like the road was swallowing it. I kept my speed steady. My grip on the wheel tightened so hard I felt something pop in my wrist. The rule sheet slid again, brushing the fabric of my jeans as if reminding me, not that I could forget, but reminding me of what came next. The upper bridge at Devil's Ridge. Rule 7. Take the upper path. In my gut, I felt the same instinctive dread you get when a doctor says, "We found something," because the closer I got to that ridge, the more the air changed. Heavier, thicker, almost metallic, like breathing the inside of a generator. My tongue tasted copper. The cold wasn't the natural kind either. It was the kind that clings to you like you've stepped into a freezer that's been closed for years. The radio crackled but didn't speak at first. It just hissed like someone breathing through cracked teeth. Then a voice finally broke through. "Do not hesitate," the man rasped. It wasn't my father. It wasn't the older miner voice either. This one was stronger, firmer, like someone who still had authority in whatever world he'd come from. "You are entering the corridor," he said. "It does not forgive hesitation." "The corridor?" I whispered, but the radio cut off. I didn't need a definition. I could feel it. The highway was narrowing, not physically but spiritually, like the space around me was being pressed inward. Like the world outside the asphalt didn't exist anymore, and wouldn't again until the road was finished with me. Then the trees parted, and Devil's Ridge rose before me. Every Kentucky driver knows Devil's Ridge by name, even if they've never been near it. It's the kind of place people joke about in broad daylight, but refuse to drive after sundown. One of those borderlands where cell service dies, compasses spin, and deer refuse to cross. People say the ridge has its own gravity. People say it's older than the mountains around it. People say lies until they see the truth with their own eyes, and then they stay quiet. Highway 224 narrowed as it climbed, cutting along a cliffside so steep I could feel the drop pulling the truck to the right. The fog didn't thin here, it thickened. Not white anymore, but a sickly gray-green that clung to the edges of the road. And then I saw the bridges. 2 of them, one above, one below, just like the rule said. But the rule hadn't prepared me for what they looked like. The lower bridge was concrete, modern, wide, with guardrails and reflective markers and a fresh coat of striping. It looked safe, maintained, like it had been built for real drivers, real trucks, real life. But the upper bridge wasn't for the living. It was ancient, wooden, blackened by decades, maybe centuries of weather. The planks sagged visibly in the middle, bowed under a weight I couldn't understand. The support beams were crooked, some barely clinging to the cliffside. Moss clung to the edges. The wind pushed through its open slats with a hollow groan that carried down the ridge like a mourning wail. No living engineer would have walked across it, let alone driven an 18-wheeler onto it. Yet it was the only one at road level. The safe-looking concrete bridge sat 40 feet below, with no access road connecting to it. It might as well have been floating. The road pulled me toward the upper bridge like a conveyor belt, the asphalt narrowing into a single lane that gave me no choice, no fork, no hesitation. The headlights caught on the rotted planks, and my stomach dropped. My radio came back alive, urgent this time. "Stay on the upper path. Do not stop. Do not look down." The voice wasn't asking, it was warning. My foot hovered over the brake without permission. I forced myself to push back onto the accelerator, keeping the speed exactly where it needed to be. Every instinct screamed, every shred of human logic begged me not to trust. the decrepit skeleton of wood ahead. But the rules had saved me this far, and breaking them had nearly killed me more times than I wanted to count. A sudden slam echoed from the trailer behind me. One blow, deep, heavy. Something big shifted inside. The force tugged the cab slightly left, and I tightened my grip, knuckles burning. The bridge's entrance was 30 yards ahead. Another slam, louder. Something wanted my attention. Something inside that trailer wanted me to look back. The rule sheet pressed against my thigh. Don't look, don't speak, don't stop, I whispered through clenched teeth. Not now, not now, not now. I reached the start of the bridge. My headlights swung onto the planks. Not a single one broke beneath my tires. Not a single one even creaked. It felt steady, too steady, like the bridge was waiting for me. Then the world shifted. Not the truck, not the bridge. Reality. The mist around the bridge lit with an eerie glow, blue-white, shimmering like static. The air hummed. The entire ridge vibrated deep in the bedrock, and figures appeared along both sides of the bridge. Miners, dozens, maybe hundreds, standing shoulder to shoulder, watching me cross. Coal-black faces lit by the faint glow leaking through the cracks in their skin. Their helmets flickered with ghostly headlamps. Some held rusted picks. Some held lunch pails. Some held nothing at all. All of them stared, not moving, not breathing, not alive. The radio spat static, then a voice barked, "Do not acknowledge them." I didn't, but one figure stepped forward into the headlights. A man with scars down one cheek. A missing eye, fingers bent at impossible angles. He lifted his hand, not flagging me down, not waving hello, but saluting. Lifting that mangled hand in a gesture that sent fear and grief crashing together inside my ribs. Because he wasn't saluting me, he was saluting the truck. The entire workforce behind him followed, row after row of dead miners lifting coal-blackened hands in solemn, silent recognition. Not of me, but of the cargo I carried. Something enormous struck the trailer from the inside. Enough force to lift the back wheels an inch. Enough to make the bridge tremble. And from the trailer, a voice roared. Not a whisper, not a breath, not a warning. A command. "You're almost here." The sound shook the beams under my wheels. The dead miners didn't move, but their eyes, those ghastly, hollow eyes, glowed brighter. And I understood the truth. They weren't saluting the cargo. They were preparing for it, and whatever waited at the end of the corridor wasn't dead yet. When the bridge leveled out, I felt a sensation I can only describe as crossing a threshold, a point that wasn't physical but spiritual, like the air itself changed allegiance, the kind of shift you don't hear or see, but feel in your marrow, a line invisible and unmarked but unmistakably real. On one side of that line, the living had a say. On the other side, the living were guests. The planks beneath the tires no longer felt like decaying timber. They felt solid, too solid, as if someone or something was holding them up from below. Every instinct told me that the bridge wasn't collapsing under the weight of the truck because it had been reinforced, not with modern supports, not with machinery, with will, with intention, with the dead. The trailer groaned again, louder this time. But the voice inside it didn't speak. It watched. I could feel it. Not eyes on me. No, eyes on the road ahead, on what was coming. The miners lining the bridge faded into the fog behind me, swallowed by distance and whatever barrier I'd passed through. But their presence lingered like static on my skin, like the sensation of being observed long after the watchers have gone. The radio crackled to life again. This time the voice was deeper than before, older, gravelly, like a throat that had swallowed dust for decades. "Do not lose focus, driver." Something in the tone made the hairs rise on my arms. This wasn't the voice of a trapped miner or a lost soul. This was the voice of someone who knew the rules because he didn't follow them. Someone who enforced them. My chest tightened. "Who are you?" The answer came slow. "The one who writes the protocol." My breath hitched. The rules, the 8 rules, the lifelines that had kept me alive. He wrote them. "Why me?" I whispered. "You were chosen." "By who?" Silence. Then, in a tone colder than the mist wrapping the truck, "By everything that lives on this road." I didn't know whether he meant the living or the dead, or the things older than both. But the idea that the road itself had a say made my stomach twist. Ahead, the fog thickened into a wall. Not a patch, not a drift. A wall, a vertical barrier of swirling gray, shimmering with faint blue glimmers like sparks in deep water. The truck plowed into it without hesitation, the headlights vanishing instantly, and for a heartbeat I drove blind, nothing but sensation to guide me. The sound changed inside that wall. The hum of the engine went hollow. The wind died. Even the vibration of the tires seemed to vanish. It felt like being inside a vacuum, no air, no direction, no concept of speed, just movement. Then something pressed against both sides of the cab. Not hands, not bodies, pressure. Like 2 immense forces were feeling for the outline of my truck, probing the shape of it, testing the surface, searching for a weakness or an entrance. My chest tightened. "Hold together," I whispered to the truck. "Just hold together." For a terrifying moment, I felt the metal bow inward. The glass of the passenger window trembled, rippling like water under strain. I could see the mist pressing closer, as if a face were forming from within it. And then the wall released us. We burst out the other side, and the road changed again. This wasn't Highway 224 anymore. This wasn't Kentucky, not the Kentucky I knew. The asphalt stretched forward, but everything around it had shifted into a landscape I couldn't name. The trees were gone. The guardrails, too. Instead, jagged rock formations rose on both sides like fossilized ribs. The sky wasn't black, it was slate gray, shimmering with faint pulses of light like distant lightning trapped behind clouds. It looked like a world inside a world, a place underneath ours, a corridor. My fingers went numb around the wheel. That's when the dead man's voice returned. "Do not slow down, and do not acknowledge anything you see from this point forward." My heartbeat punched against my ribs. "Why?" "Because the moment you do, they know you see them." My mouth went dry. "Who?" "They are older than the mines, older than the mountains." Another pause, a rasping inhale. "They are the ones who demand tribute." A chill rippled through me. Tribute, cargo, the thing in my trailer. The road sloped downward into a long valley, the mist churning along the edges like boiling water. As I descended, I saw shapes embedded in the rock walls, tall figures etched like carvings. But they weren't drawings, they were impressions, silhouettes, human-shaped hollows pressed into stone as if bodies had been absorbed into it, some curled, some upright, some reaching, none with faces. I forced my eyes forward. Don't look, don't break focus, don't acknowledge. Then, out of the corner of my eye, one of the stone figures shifted. I didn't turn. I didn't blink. I pretended I hadn't seen it, but I felt it watching. The air temperature dropped hard enough that frost crackled across the inside of my windshield. The defroster couldn't keep up. My breath fogged. My fingers stiffened. The dead man on the radio spoke again. "You're in their domain now. You cannot stop." A tremor rolled beneath the tires, like something massive shifting underground. The entire valley vibrated. Dust fell from the rock walls. The truck's suspension groaned. Then I heard them. Voices, not human voices. These were deeper, resonant, layered, like dozens of tones speaking at once. A language made of pressure and vibration rather than sound. They weren't speaking to me. They were speaking about me. "Why me?" I whispered before I could stop myself. The radio hissed sharply, almost like a shout. "Do not speak to them!" I clamped my jaw shut. Too late. The voices outside shifted. They'd heard me. The next tremor was stronger. Something enormous moved beneath the road. I felt the contours of its size through the steering column, so big my truck was an insect crawling across its skin. My stomach dropped. The highway curved right, hugging the wall of the valley. The mist ahead brightened, blue light flashing through it like a pulse. The radio flared again. "You're approaching the gate. Do not stop. Do not falter. The road has almost made its decision." "About what?" Silence. Then, "Whether you are delivering the cargo or becoming it." My heart slammed against my ribs. The mist parted ahead, and I saw it. The gate. Not a structure, not a tunnel. A vertical tear in reality itself, shimmering with blue fire. And before it, waiting, towering, stood something the miners hadn't prepared me for. Something that wasn't a ghost. Something that wasn't human. Something older than both. It stepped forward on legs shaped like a man's, but too long, too thin. Its body stretched upward, 15 feet tall, skeletal and coal black, glowing with fissures like burning veins. It had no face, just a smooth surface where a face should be, reflecting my headlights like polished stone. It lifted its arm and pointed at me, just as the thing inside my trailer started pounding to get out. The creature's arm didn't simply rise. It unfolded, joints bending at angles that defied anatomy, like a limb designed in a place where bones weren't a limitation. When its hand extended fully, fingers long enough to reach my windshield, if it moved just a few steps forward, the gesture wasn't aggressive. It was acknowledging me, accepting me, claiming me. The pounding inside the trailer intensified, not frantic, not panicked, purposeful, rhythmic, as if whatever was inside had waited for this exact moment. The steel framing of the trailer groaned, bolts strained, the entire back end lurched left, then right, pulling at the fifth wheel like it was trying to break free. My hands locked onto the wheel so tight my tendons screamed. The huge, faceless figure stepped closer, its movements slow and deliberate, as if nothing in existence could challenge its dominance in this valley between worlds. Blue fire licked along its fissured skin. Every step shook the ground. Mist rolled toward it, not away, like the creature was gravity. The radio flared. "Do not stop. Do not break speed. Do not acknowledge the gatekeeper." Gatekeeper. The word made my stomach drop. The figure wasn't the enemy. It was the judge. The road had been leading me toward it from the moment I crossed mile marker 12. Everything since, the miners, the voices, the things in the trees, the shifting landscape, had all been the test before the verdict. I wasn't just a driver. I was being evaluated. For what? I didn't know. For survival, for worth, for sacrifice. The gatekeeper lowered its arm, then dragged 2 long fingers across the air in front of it. The space warped where it touched, bending like heat waves on asphalt. The ground beneath my truck vibrated harder, and the mist around the gate crackled like electricity. Inside the trailer, the pounding stopped. Silence. Then a voice rose from the cargo darkness, a voice that didn't belong to any miner, a voice that wasn't dead, deep, resonant, ancient, so old it made my bones ache. "You will open!" My breath froze in my throat. Open what? The door? The gate? The rules? The gatekeeper tilted its head, sensing movement inside the trailer. The blue fissures across its body pulsed brighter. It stepped nearer, towering over the lane, casting a shadow so complete it swallowed my headlights. I could barely breathe. The radio erupted with a voice so forceful it rattled my teeth. "Don't listen to it, driver. Keep moving. You are not its vessel." My chest tightened. Its vessel. Was that what this was about? Was that what the road was choosing? Not whether I delivered the cargo, but whether I became it. The gatekeeper took another step. The valley trembled. Its faceless head turned slightly toward the trailer, like it could see right through the steel walls and into the deeper reality inside. The blue fire brightened again, casting dancing shadows across the jagged stone. The trailer shook violently. A massive impact struck the inside wall so hard the steel dented outward. Then a second blow, then a third. The cargo wasn't trying to escape. It was trying to break free of reality itself. "You will open," the ancient voice commanded again, louder this time, vibrating the entire chassis of the truck. "I have waited." "No!" the radio shrieked. "Mercer, whatever happens, do not release that latch." I hadn't touched anything, but the latch on the trailer door, clicked on its own. My stomach dropped. The latch turned again. Click. The door strained inward, then outward, like invisible hands were twisting the locking rod. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no, stay shut." The dead man's voice on the radio snapped like a whip. "Driver, if the cargo escapes before you reach the gate, it takes you instead." My heart spiked. "What is it?" The answer came instantly, something that was never meant to be moved. The gatekeeper took another step toward the road, so massive it blocked out the sky behind it. Its faceless head angled downward directly toward me. I felt heat radiate from its cracked skin, heat like a furnace burning behind stone. The mist surged around its feet. Reality shivered. Something inside the trailer whispered my name. Not shouted, not screamed, whispered, "Mercer." The sound slid into my consciousness, bypassing my ears, my skull, my thoughts, speaking directly into whatever part of me had fear as its core operating system. My hands went cold, not from the temperature. From understanding, the cargo wasn't just powerful, it was sentient, and the gatekeeper wasn't here to receive it. The gatekeeper was here to stop it. The radio crackled again. "Driver, listen to me very carefully," the voice said. "You are about to enter the gate. When you cross into its radius, the road will collapse behind you. Do not look back. Do not stop. Deliver the cargo through the tear." "What happens if I fail?" Silence. Then the answer, "Everyone fails after one mistake. You won't get two." The gatekeeper lifted both arms now, massive, impossible limbs stretching outward like it was preparing to embrace or crush the entire truck. Light burst from the fissures across its skin, casting the valley in flickering blue-white fire. Inside the trailer, the lock turned. Click. Halfway open. The ancient voice roared, "Release me!" "No!" I screamed, gripping the wheel with everything I had. "Stay inside!" the gatekeeper bellowed, not with a mouth, but with its entire being. A shockwave of blue fire blasted outward, shaking the cliff walls, sending dust and stone avalanches tumbling toward the road. The latch on the trailer turned again. Click, 3/4 loose. The radio voice howled, "Drive, Mercer, drive now!" I slammed the accelerator. The truck lurched forward. The gatekeeper leaned down, reaching. The latch turned the final inch. Click. The trailer doors burst open behind me. A wind unlike any earthly force surged through the valley, ripping mist, dust, and stone upward. The truck's tires skidded. The cab rattled. My heartbeat jackhammered against my ribs. Behind me, something enormous unfolded. Something with limbs and bodies and shapes that shifted like molten darkness. Something that had been contained for too long. Something that had waited for a living vessel. The gatekeeper roared again, this time in defiance, as the creature inside my trailer screamed back, the sound vibrating through every cell in my body. The tear in reality, the gate, flared open like a wound in the world, and the road ahead warped, twisting into a path that could only lead one direction, through. I held the wheel, held my breath, held the only thought still clear in my mind. If I survived this, I'd never drive after dark in Kentucky again. The moment the gate flared open in front of me, everything I knew about motion, speed, gravity, direction stopped mattering. The road didn't just tilt or curve, it bent, like it had become a living thing twisting its spine. The horizon folded in on itself as if the world were being pulled through a tunnel made of its own reflection. Behind me, the creature that had broken free from the trailer roared again, not in anger, not even in triumph. Its roar sounded like recognition, like it had found the place it belonged, the place it had been waiting for. But the gatekeeper wasn't letting it pass uncontested. The massive, faceless being planted one colossal foot onto the asphalt, the impact cracking the road like a glass plate. Blue fire erupted beneath it, casting shadows that twisted up the valley walls. With both arms extended, it blocked the final stretch before the gate, protecting it, guarding it, opposing whatever had ridden in my trailer. I didn't slow down. I couldn't. If I hesitated even a heartbeat, that living cargo might decide I was the easier vessel to inhabit. The dead man's voice on the radio was shouting over the chaos, static-laced, frantic, terrified. "Driver, the gate chooses what crosses. You must align the truck perfectly. The gate won't wait for you." The wheel jerked violently in my hands, pulled by invisible forces that didn't want me staying in my lane. The asphalt rippled like waves. Mist curled up around the tires, gripping at them, trying to slow me. The road itself was fighting the decision. "It doesn't want to let me in," I yelled. "Then force it," the radio roared back. "The living rarely get this close. The gatekeeper hasn't chosen yet. Stay on the path." A gust of scorching air blasted me from behind as the creature in the trailer surged forward, its newly freed form stretching across the lane. Shadowy limbs scraped the sides of the truck. Its movement wasn't random. It was pushing me toward the gate. I didn't know when I stopped being terrified. Somewhere between the collapsing bridge and the valley of stone figures, real fear had burned itself out. What filled its place wasn't courage. It was survival instinct, raw, feral, absolute. The gatekeeper lowered its arms, bracing for collision, and for the first time since I'd arrived, it spoke. Its voice didn't come from a mouth. It erupted from the ground, the sky, the stones, the damn air itself. "This does not belong here." The creature behind me answered with a sound like molten metal cooling inside a human throat. "All realms must open." My truck lunged forward, caught between the two forces. For a moment, I truly believed this was how I died, torn apart between two titans fighting over the fate of something I had accidentally delivered. Then the road beneath the truck cracked, wide, deep, a fault line splitting directly down the center. The truck's wheels dipped for one terrifying second as the asphalt began caving inward, opening like a mouth. The mist rushed downward, sucked into the widening gap. I slammed the accelerator harder. The cab strained. The engine screamed. But the truck climbed out of the crack just before the road collapsed entirely, leaving a smoking ravine behind me. The gatekeeper lunged with one massive hand, swinging downward in an arc big enough to crush a two-story house. The creature from the trailer intercepted the blow mid-air. Two unstoppable forces collided with a shockwave that threw my truck sideways. The steering wheel ripped from my hands. The cab tilted, metal screeching. The trailer whipped like a tail behind me, lifting two wheels off the ground. "Correct it," the radio voice screamed. "Mercer, correct it or the road will decide for you." I grabbed the wheel and spun it left, fighting the tilt. The truck slammed back onto four wheels, the impact rattling my spine. Then the gate widened. I didn't know reality could open like that, like a wound tearing through dimensions. Blue fire tore across the sky. The valley went silent. Even the creatures battling behind me paused, only for a breath, but long enough for the gate to pulse with a gravity I could feel pulling at my bones. The road ahead straightened, aligned perfectly with the glowing tear. The message was clear. I had one chance, one shot to deliver the cargo, one moment where everything the rules had prepared me for came together. Behind me, the creature hissed my name again. Mercer. The syllables crawled across my skin, burrowing deep inside me like they were testing my identity. Ahead, the gatekeeper slammed one foot down, bracing itself between me and the tear in reality. "The living does not cross," it thundered. From behind, the other entity roared back, its voice cracking stone. "The living is the key." I didn't know what they meant. I didn't care. I locked my hands around the wheel, every muscle in my body screaming, and aimed the truck directly at the gatekeeper. The dead man's voice on the radio shouted one final command. "Do not slow. The gate reads intent." My foot pressed the accelerator to the floor. The truck roared. The valley walls trembled, and then the gatekeeper moved. Not to crush me, not to block me, but to test me. It lowered its massive, faceless head until its smooth surface reflected my entire truck, distorted, insignificant, mortal. It was waiting for me to break, waiting for me to hesitate. I didn't. I drove straight into its shadow. The creature behind me shrieked, a sound that fractured the air. Limbs scraped the pavement, clawing for purchase. It wanted me to reach the gate. It needed it. But the gatekeeper lifted one arm slowly, deliberately, moving to strike. I braced myself, and just as its arm descended, the road beneath the truck shimmered. Not the road, the gate. It pulled me, pulled the entire truck forward, pulled reality inward like a thread being yanked through a needle. Everything outside stretched, everything inside compressed, and I crossed the threshold. The gate swallowed the truck whole. Light exploded, sound died. The steering wheel vanished from my hands. Gravity flipped, the cab tilted, my body lifted from the seat. Darkness rushed in, and the last thing I heard before everything blacked out was the ancient voice from the trailer, whispering like a satisfied predator, "You have delivered me." I didn't land so much as arrive. When consciousness snapped back into my body, I was suspended in a weightless silence, so complete, it felt like the world had been stripped of sound entirely. I couldn't feel the seat beneath me, couldn't feel the wheel, couldn't feel my limbs. My breath didn't fog, my heart didn't pound. It was like falling without moving. And then the truck settled, not onto asphalt, onto something softer than stone, harder than soil, a surface that seemed to flex beneath the tires as if it were alive. The air tasted stale, ancient, the way an abandoned pantry smells when you open it after 20 years. My ears rang, my vision flickered, then the world stabilized. The headlights flicked back on, weak and dim, barely illuminating 30 feet ahead. I blinked hard, then harder, until shapes formed out of the shadows. I wasn't on a highway anymore. I was inside a cavern. A cavern so enormous the ceiling disappeared into darkness, a void stretching upward with no end. The walls pulsed faintly with veins of blue fire that snaked across the stone like a circulatory system. The ground, what the truck sat on, was a flat, endless plain of dark rock carved with patterns I couldn't decipher. Symbols, glyphs, marks that looked like they weren't meant for human eyes. Something moved within the stone, not on it, within it. Shadows slid behind the carvings like silhouettes behind frosted glass, too quick to define, too numerous to count. My chest tightened. Whatever this place was, it wasn't built for the living. The radio snapped on. No static, no knuckles-cracking voice from a dead miner. Just a single sound. Breathing, slow, massive, predatory. I didn't dare touch the dial. Something scraped across the plain in the darkness to my left. A long, dragging sound. Not footsteps. Something heavier. Something with weight and purpose and too many joints. My fight-or-flight instinct lit up so violently I gripped the steering wheel just to keep from losing my sanity. A faint blue glow appeared ahead. Not a torch, not fire. An opening, a doorway carved into the stone wall, framed by the same glowing veins. And beyond it, shadows shifted, tall ones, thousands of them, waiting, watching, deciding. My radio breathed again, closer this time. Then a voice, whisper, crawled out. "Proceed, driver." It wasn't a request, it wasn't guidance, it was a sentence. I put the truck into gear and let it roll forward, the cab trembling as if unsure whether it still existed in the physical world. The trailer rumbled behind me, not with cargo movement, but with resonance, like something inside was humming, satisfied. I didn't dare look in the mirrors. I didn't dare breathe too loudly. The cavern swallowed my headlights as the truck crept forward. The stone walls curved inward the closer I came to the doorway, funneling the truck into a narrowing corridor, carved with spirals that felt more like warnings than decorations. My skull ached, not physically, deeper, like something inside me was being reshaped, pulled, tested. A voice rose from the walls themselves, echoing inside my head rather than through my ears. "The living has crossed," a chorus answered. "The living has delivered." I swallowed hard, knuckles whitening. Not miners' voices, not the ancient thing in the trailer. These were the voices of the stone, of the gate, of the realm itself. A gust of wind swept through the corridor, cold enough to burn. The truck shuddered. My breath hitched. I pushed the accelerator gently, just enough to keep the wheels turning. The corridor widened again, opening into a chamber so vast it made the cavern look like a closet. A pit lay at the center, a pit of blue fire swirling like a vortex, illuminating thousands of towering figures standing in rings around it. Figures shaped like the gatekeeper, faceless and skeletal with fissures of glowing blue running through their forms. Each one at least 15 feet tall, each one perfectly still, except one. The gatekeeper I'd confronted on the road stepped from the crowd, towering above the others. It had followed me. No, it had arrived before me. Its faceless head dipped slightly, as if acknowledging the presence behind me. The trailer shook. A slow, unfolding sound filled the chamber, and then the thing that had been inside the trailer stepped into the open. I didn't see its full form at once. I saw pieces, limbs like smoke forged into muscle, a torso that shifted between shadow and matter, a head shaped almost like a man's, except stretched too far, too thin, too elongated, eyes, if they were eyes, like burning cracks in obsidian. It stepped onto the cavern floor, and the stone rippled around its feet, reacting to its presence the way skin reacts to heat. The gatekeeper lowered into a stance, not defensive, reverent. The chamber's voices rose again in unison. The sealed one returns. The sealed one. My heart hammered. That's what I'd transported. Not a ghost, not a demon, something imprisoned, something contained. Something that had been moved here centuries ago, locked away in a boundary between realms, and I delivered it to the place it once ruled. The sealed creature's head turned toward me. It didn't blink, didn't move closer. It simply regarded me, as if I was the first living thing it had seen in centuries. My throat tightened. Behind me, the radio crackled with faint static, like someone desperately clutching for a dying signal. Then a whisper came through. "Driver, listen." It was the dead miner's voice again, weak, fading. "Back out of the chamber, now." "I can't," I whispered. "They can't hold the gatekeeper if you stay. Mercer, you have to—" The radio cut out, replaced by a new voice, a voice I hadn't heard before, a woman's voice, calm, clear, cold as the grave. "You brought him through. The gate will reward you." My blood ran cold. She wasn't speaking through the radio. She was behind me. I froze, breath locked, heart seizing. Slowly, so slowly I thought I would tear muscle from bone. I turned my head just enough to see the rear of the cab reflected faintly in the windshield. A woman stood behind my seat, not inside the truck. In the reflection, wearing a miner's coat, coal-black face, white eyes like two full moons, smiling. "You've done well, driver." I blinked. She was gone, but her voice remained. "You delivered the sealed one, and now the road delivers you." My stomach collapsed into itself. "No," I whispered. "No, I followed the rules. I delivered. The cavern voices drowned me out. The living made the crossing. The living carried the sealed one. The living is chosen. Every glowing giant turned toward me at once, even the sealed one. All of them waiting for the verdict, waiting to decide if I remained among the living or became their next transport. The sealed one stepped forward, and the entire cavern responded as though it were a single living organism. The glowing fissures in the walls pulsed in rhythm with its movements. The blue fire in the central pit surged higher, bending toward it like flames bowing before a king. The towering figure stopped only 20 yards from my truck. My headlights flickered, dimmed, then died completely. Only the blue fire illuminated the chamber now, and in that eerie glow the sealed one's silhouette seemed to stretch and contort, too fluid to be flesh, too grounded to be smoke. Its presence filled the space around me, compressing the air until breathing felt like pulling gravel into my lungs. When it spoke, its voice didn't echo off stone. It echoed through me. "You carried me through the boundary. No living driver has done this in an age." My mouth went dry. Behind the sealed one, the gatekeeper straightened, massive arms unfolding. Though faceless, its stance conveyed unmistakable warning and tension, like a warrior preparing for a duel. It had fought too many times before. The sealed one tilted its elongated head toward the gatekeeper. "Your watch has ended, Sentinel." A ripple of energy spread across the chamber as if those words alone fractured the rules of this realm. The gatekeeper's voice boomed from everywhere. "The gate remains closed." The sealed one raised one clawed hand, the tips glowing with a brightness that made the cavern walls recoil. "You cannot stop what has already begun." A shock wave of force rippled outward, inscribing new glowing symbols across the floor. The chamber's giants, the other gatekeepers, shifted their stance, their bodies thrumming with energy. They were not alive. They were not dead. They were mechanisms, sentinels, guardians of something older than coal and older than earth, and they were preparing for combat. The sealed one turned its burning gaze back to me. "And you, driver," a deep shudder ran through the truck, "you are the anomaly." The word hit me like a fist. Anomaly, a mistake, something that shouldn't have been able to do what I just did. "I didn't choose this," I said, voice trembling so violently I hardly recognized it. The sealed one tilted its head again. "No one chooses the gate chooses the vessel." "I'm not your vessel," I managed, gripping the wheel like it was the only real thing left in existence. "You are exactly that," it answered, "or you wouldn't be here." One of the glowing Colossus gatekeepers stepped forward, massive footfalls shaking the truck, its arms lowered, crackling with blue fire that dripped like molten energy striking the ground. The sealed one's entire torso rotated, without turning its legs. It faced the approaching giant with an inhuman grace, raising its arms wide like welcoming an embrace. "Come then," it roared. The battle happened faster than sound. The gatekeeper swung a colossal arm. The sealed one dissolved into smoke. The arm passed through empty air. Then the sealed one reappeared behind the gatekeeper. Both hands plunged deep into the giant's back, as if phasing between states of matter. Blue fire exploded outward. The entire cavern shook. More giants surged into motion, moving with thunderous precision, learned over millennia. One reached for the sealed one. Another attempted to pin it with crackling chains of energy that snapped like electrified serpents. But the sealed one moved like mist with intent, like shadow with intelligence, effortless, predatory, ancient, violent. I watched in frozen horror as the creature tore through its captors, rendering them into slabs of fallen stone, their bodies dimming as the blue fire drained from their fissures. One giant toppled, crushing glyph-carved pillars. Another fell to its knees, its torso reduced to crumbling rubble. A third detonated in a burst of azure light that scorched streaks across the sealed one's form, leaving glowing scars. But nothing stopped it, nothing slowed it, and with each kill the sealed one grew brighter, more solid, more real. As if feeding on the destruction of the gate's sentinels strengthened it, my breathing became shallow. The truck vibrated, not from fear, but from resonance. The entire cab hummed, responding to the energy in the cavern. I felt the rules, the 8 rules I memorized, dissolve in my mind. Here they meant nothing. Here I was operating under a different system, one older than warnings and restraints and superstitions. The gate had chosen me. But that didn't mean the sealed one was done with me. Amid the chaos, the ancient creature turned back toward my truck. It moved slowly now, not from fatigue, but intentionally, like a predator approaching a trembling prey. "You delivered me," it said, thunder rolling beneath its words. "Now I offer you a place in the beginning of a new order." "A place," my voice cracked. "You want me to join you?" "Not join," it whispered. "Anchor." Anchor. The word hit me harder than any blow. Anchors didn't move freely. Anchors held things in place. Anchors got dragged under. "No," I choked. "No, I'm not." "You are," it answered. The remaining gatekeepers bellowed war cries of flame and stone, charging the sealed one with renewed fury. Blue fire poured from their limbs. Pillars cracked and fell. The chamber warped, the air fracturing with spiritual pressure. The sealed one snarled, and the next instant it blurred into a streak of shadow and flame, reappearing directly beside the truck, inches away, its burning eye slits locked onto mine. You drove the road between worlds and did not falter. You crossed the gate and did not disintegrate. You carried me without becoming me. It leaned closer, void heat radiating across my face. "Are the first worthy living vessel since the old kingdom fell." My heart stuttered. "Old kingdom, living vessel? You misunderstand," I whispered, voice barely stable. "I drove because I had no choice." The sealed one's smile widened, a sickening distortion that tore its face into too many angles. "There is always a choice." Behind the creature, the gatekeeper, the first one I saw, rose. Half its body was cracked. Blue fire poured from several wounds, but it still stood, it still moved, it still fought. And in a voice that sounded like mountains grinding together, the gatekeeper thundered, "Driver of the living world, run!" The sealed one twisted its head sharply. "You dare!" But the gatekeeper didn't let it finish. It slammed its fist into the ground. The cavern floor exploded. A shock wave ripped outward. The truck lurched backward, skidding across the stone. Rocks cascaded from the ceiling. The chamber's walls pulsated violently. Rifts of blue fire erupted from the glyphs beneath my wheels. The gatekeeper bellowed a final command. "The living must not be claimed." The sealed one roared, lunging. But the floor beneath the truck collapsed. Gravity disappeared. The wheel ripped from my hands. The world spun upside down in a whirlpool of darkness and blue fire. As the truck plummeted through the abyss, I heard the last words from the crumbling gatekeeper. "Remember, driver, you were chosen to live." Then everything went black. I didn't hit the ground. I expected impact, bone-splitting, metal-twisting, world-ending impact. But instead, the fall slowed. The darkness thickened, turning the free fall into something thicker than air, something viscous, almost liquid, until the truck drifted as if suspended in an underwater trench. Then, light. A thin, jagged sliver first, then more. Fractures of pale morning gold seeping through cracks in the darkness. The abyss peeled open like wet paint dripping off glass. My truck slammed down, hard, but onto asphalt. The impact rattled my teeth, jolted my spine, and made the horn blare for a full second before it jammed silent. I gasped, clutching the wheel, disoriented and half blinded by sudden daylight. Daylight. Across the windshield, blue sky stretched wide, tinted by early dawn. Birds cried somewhere far off. Leaves rustled. The world looked normal, unbelievably, impossibly normal. I was on a 2-lane mountain road, cracked but real, tangible, the kind of rural Kentucky back road I'd driven 1,000 times. Sunlight filtered through a gap in the trees, and the truck's engine turned over like nothing had ever happened. For a long minute, I just sat there, breath shallow, hands shaking. My fingertips tingled, my chest ached as though I'd been holding my breath for hours. My head throbbed from the shift between worlds. Had I imagined everything? No, every instinct in my body screamed the opposite. My clothes were coated in soot dust that wasn't from this world. The cab smelled like cold stone and ancient fire, and the faintest whisper still crawled beneath my skin like an ember of some other realm clinging to me. Gradually, awareness returned. The trailer. I snapped my head toward the mirror. The doors shut, locked, intact. No holes, no claw marks, no sign of anything ever having broken out. But I had watched those doors burst open. I had watched the creature leap onto the cavern floor. I had seen the battle between forces that didn't belong in our world, or any world, made for the living. None of it reflected in the steel behind me now, as if the trailer had rewound back in time. Or as if my reality had been patched up, like a wound stitched over. I climbed out of the cab slowly, boots crunching gravel. The air was shockingly fresh, crisp, pine-heavy. Everything felt wrong simply because everything felt familiar. I turned in a slow circle. Behind me, the road stretched empty. No gatekeeper, no valley, no collapsed cliffs, no glowing fissures or blue fire, just asphalt. Just Kentucky. But when I looked down at the gravel beneath my boots, something glinted unnaturally in the sunlight. Blue, not sapphire, not paint, a shard, a fragment of something crystalline, glowing faintly with the same blue light that had filled the cavern. Something that absolutely did not belong in any Appalachian forest. My breath hitched, so I didn't imagine it. I didn't hallucinate any of it. I picked up the shard. It pulsed once beneath my fingers, warm like a heartbeat, and then went still. Behind me, the radio fizzled. I froze. Then a voice crackled through, weak, distorted, but unmistakably human. "Mercer, do you copy?" My blood iced. It was the dead miner, the one who'd guided me through the gate. "You made it," he said. "Gatekeeper placed you where the living could return." I swallowed hard. My throat felt raw. "Where am I?" A long pause. Then, "You're back on Highway 217, near Stonebridge." 217, miles from 119, miles from the gate, miles from everything supernatural that had just torn itself through my life. "But listen carefully," the dead miner continued. "You didn't leave empty-handed." My hand tightened around the glowing shard. "What is this thing?" I asked. Silence. Then his answer slithered through the static like a warning wrapped in regret. "Proof." "Proof of what?" "That the sealed one crossed." Another pause. "That you delivered it." I felt everything inside me freeze. "Is it loose? Here, in the living world?" "No," he said. "Not yet." Not yet. The gravel felt like it shifted under my boots. "Then where is it now?" "In its realm," he answered. Completing what it began long before the first mine was carved into this land. "And what's that?" Static swelled. When the voice came back, it was barely more than a breath. "Conquest." I swallowed hard. I didn't choose this. I never agreed to. "You're not listening, Mercer," he cut in sharply. "You were chosen by the gate. That is not a job you can resign. I don't want any part of this." "You already have part of it," he said. "You brought something ancient enough to bend the laws of death and stone, and it saw you." The shard pulsed again in my palm, faint but unmistakable. "Saw me, claimed me." I'd heard those words in the cavern. A living vessel, an anchor. I forced the thoughts aside. What happened after I fell, after the gatekeeper intervened? Silence, a silence so heavy I thought the voice was gone. Then, "The gate is broken." My breath caught. "What does that mean?" Another long pause. "It means the boundary between their realm and ours is no longer fixed. The sealed one will try to push through. When it does, the gatekeepers will fail to contain it." I closed my eyes. "Why me?" I whispered. The answer was quiet. You're the only living soul the gate allowed to cross and return. That makes you the only living soul capable of going back." "No," I whispered. "No, no." "Mercer," the miner said, voice suddenly urgent, "listen to me very carefully." A chill crawled up my spine. "You're not done with that road." I opened my eyes. The shard pulsed brighter. A breeze swept the forest, bending branches in a direction wind rarely flowed. The world around me shifted, subtle, wrong, like the aftertaste of a nightmare bleeding into morning. The dead miner whispered one last line, "And the sealed one remembers you." The radio went dead. The wind stopped, and the blue shard in my hand burned hot enough to sting. I stood there on Highway 217, heart pounding, staring at the asphalt that looked so normal under the early daylight. But nothing was normal. Not anymore. The forest around me didn't breathe. That was the first thing I noticed. Pine trees should sway, leaves should rustle, birds should start calling to one another when the sun rises. But here, on this forgotten stretch of Highway 217, the world felt like it was holding its breath, like it knew something had crossed back with me. I climbed slowly into the cab, fingers trembling as I set the glowing shard on the passenger seat. Even without looking at it, I could feel it, like a presence that pressed faintly against reality, pushing outward, probing for cracks. The truck's dashboard flickered alive. Check engine, ABS light, low tire pressure, normal warnings. But beneath those lines of familiar amber and red, something new bled across the digital screen. Unresolved transfer. Anchor located. My stomach plummeted. Anchor. That word again. Before I could even reach for the keys, the ignition turned over on its own. The truck rumbled awake. "No, absolutely not," I muttered, slamming my palm against the wheel. "We're not doing this again." The engine revved harder, rattling the cab. The radio clicked on. Static. Then a voice I'd never heard before. A woman's voice, smooth, measured, unnervingly calm. "You shouldn't resist, Mercer." My blood froze. It was her. The woman I'd seen reflected behind me in the cavern, smiling with coal-black dust on her face. The one who told me the gate would reward me, the one who wasn't alive or dead, but something in between. "Get out of my radio," I snapped. "You are between realms now," she replied. "Your signal belongs to us." "This wasn't supposed to be my life," I hissed through clenched teeth. "I was supposed to make a delivery and go home." "You were never supposed to do anything," she said. "You were chosen. The living rarely pass through the gate and return whole." "I'm not whole." "No," she said softly. "You're not." A shiver coursed through me. "What do you want?" I asked. "You misunderstand again, Mercer. The question is not what we want." The radio crackled. Then the woman's voice softened into something colder, clinical, almost gentle. "It's what he wants. The sealed one." I slammed my fist into the radio, but the plastic didn't even crack. The voice kept coming, smooth as oil across water. "He marked you when you carried him. You felt it, a burn, a pulse, the hitch in your breath, the anchor forming. I didn't agree to any of this." "Anchors don't agree," she whispered. "They endure." The windshield fogged slightly, even though the morning was mild. A breath pattern formed on the inside glass. Small at first, then widening. Someone invisible was leaning close. Too close. I grabbed the door handle to bail out. It wouldn't budge. I pulled harder. Locked. The truck locked itself from the inside. The radio clicked again, shifting to another frequency, a lower tone, like a different entity had tuned in. A voice slithered through, raspier, ancient. Familiar only because I'd heard it screaming victory in the cavern, the sealed one. "You carried me," the creature whispered. "Now I carry you." My pulse spiked so violently my vision blurred. "I'm not your vessel." "Oh," the sealed one purred, "but you already are." The driver's side window frosted over despite the warm breeze outside. Frost crawled in branching lines, beautiful, intricate, horrifying. It formed a symbol, not random. I recognized it, a glyph from the cavern floor, a sigil of binding, the same sigils that pulsed beneath the sealed one as it tore through the gatekeepers. Panic surged. I shoved my shoulder into the door. Nothing. I tried the passenger door, locked. I kicked at the windshield. It didn't even tremble. The shard on the seat glowed brighter, responding to my fear or feeding on it. The sealed one's voice grew deeper, vibrating through the cab. "Your world is opening, Mercer. The gate is wounded. The realms press against one another. There is work to be done, and you will guide me through." "I won't," I spat. "I don't even know how." "That is why you were chosen," he whispered. "You can drive both worlds." "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, not me." The woman's voice returned, soft, coaxing. "You survived the no-stop zone. You crossed the upper bridge. You delivered a creature made of shadow into the heart of its domain. You lived where no living thing was meant to." "That wasn't strength," I snapped. "That was desperation." "And desperation," she murmured, "is the most potent form of faith." The truck jolted hard. The engine growled low, almost animalistic. The wheel twitched under my hands as if something unseen was gripping it from the other side. I felt the air change, shift, grow heavier, as if the barrier between here and the cavern was thinning, opening, searching for me. "You're not taking me back," I said. "I won't go." "You will," the sealed one answered, "because when the gate tears fully, my path must be tethered, and only an anchor can hold the breach open without burning." "I'm not an anchor," I yelled, but my voice cracked because part of me already knew. The shard pulsed again, hotter, brighter. Then the windshield fog cleared, the locks clicked open, and the radio fell silent. All at once, everything stopped. The forest rustled again. Birds chirped. The warm breeze swept through the trees. Normalcy returned so suddenly it almost hurt. Then the radio spoke one last time. A whisper, just one line. "He knows where you are now." And then it went dead. Silence swallowed the cab. The shard dimmed, but did not go dark, and I understood the truth. I had not escaped. I had been sent back, because the sealed one needed me to be here, because it needed a foothold in the living world, because I was the first living anchor to cross and return, and whatever came next would come through me. The engine idled beneath me, rumbling like a sleeping animal that might wake up if I breathed wrong. I didn't dare move, didn't dare blink too slow, didn't dare touch the shard glowing faintly on the passenger seat. The forest outside had returned to normal, at least on the surface, but something underneath the world was no longer resting. The air felt thinner, as if a vacuum had opened just beyond the veil of what human eyes could perceive. A quiet knock came from the sleeper compartment behind me. Once, twice, 3 times, slow, deliberate, human. My heart stuttered. Someone or something was inside the truck with me. I didn't turn, couldn't. If whatever was back there wanted to hurt me, it already would have. The silence that followed was worse than another knock. It was the type of silence that waits for you to make the wrong choice. Then a man's voice whispered from the dark behind me, "You need to drive." I froze solid. The voice was familiar, too familiar. "Dad?" Silence. A longer silence than before, but thicker, deeper, like the truck filled with fog I couldn't see. Then, yes. A lie. I didn't know how I knew, but I did. Whoever, whatever, was back there wasn't my father. It used his voice perfectly, the tone, the cadence, the slight rasp from years of smoking, but there was no warmth in it, none of the weight, none of the history, just imitation. "Come on, Mercer," the voice coaxed. "We don't have much time." My throat tightened. "Show yourself." A soft shift of weight on the mattress behind me, then fabric rustled. Someone or something sat up. "I can't," the voice said. "Not yet." "Then we're not going anywhere." Another silence. Then the thing pretending to be my father exhaled slowly, the sound scraping the air like sandpaper on metal. "The gate is weakening. He's coming." My skin prickled. "The sealed one?" "Yes, and something else." "Something worse?" "No." The voice paused. "Something older." The temperature in the cab dropped 10 degrees. Frost crawled across the edges of the windshield in delicate tendrils. My breath fogged. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. A long breath behind me, a breath that sounded like it didn't require lungs. "You're the only living anchor," it said. "Only you can drive both worlds. Only you can keep the tear from widening." "I'm not part of this war," I snapped. "I don't belong to either side." "Yes," the false voice agreed. "And that is why they will fight hardest for you." I turned in the seat, unable to help myself. The sleeper compartment was dark, but not empty. A silhouette sat hunched on the bed, shoulders too sharp, neck too long, head cocked at an unnatural angle, watching me with patient hunger. It was not my father, but it wore his outline like a coat. "Why copy him?" I whispered. The creature shifted, its joints clicking faintly. "He loves you," it said, "and love makes humans slow." My skin crawled. "Get out," I said through clenched teeth. "Get out of my truck." The creature's head lowered like it was smiling. "I can't, not until you hear the message." "I don't want a message. You don't have a choice." The shard on the seat pulsed again, this time violently, sending a shock through the cab. The silhouette in the sleeper hissed and recoiled, retreating into the dark like light burned it. Then, just like that, it vanished, gone, not in a physical way, more like it was unmanifested, like something stopped imagining it, and it simply wasn't real anymore. The radio clicked on, static, then a single line trembling with urgency. "Mercer, don't listen to him." It was the miner again, the same dead voice that had guided me. "Whatever shape he took, that wasn't one of us. That's a remnant." "What's a remnant?" I whispered. "A fragment," he said. "A leftover consciousness pulled out of the tear when the gate broke. It mimics those you've lost. It feeds on emotional recognition. It wants you to choose wrong." "Choose what?" "Choose your allegiance." My stomach twisted. "I don't want allegiance." "You'll have one whether you want to or not," he said. "Both sides want the same thing, stability, balance, a controlled tear. But the sealed one, he wants a tear wide enough to swallow everything." I swallowed hard. "Can he come through?" "Not yet," the dead miner said. "He needs you first, needs you to drive the path between worlds again." "I won't." "You will. The anchor always drives. It's the rule." "No, it was just a job, a delivery." "A nightmare that ended." Silence. Then the dead man's voice softened. "Mercer, look in the mirror." I didn't want to, I really didn't want to, but something tugged at me. Curiosity, dread, inevitability. I slowly lifted my eyes to the rearview mirror and froze. My reflection wasn't alone. Standing behind me, barely visible, was a second silhouette, tall, thin, shifting like smoke trapped inside a man-shaped container. Two glowing cracks burned where eyes should be. The sealed one, watching me, waiting. The dead miner hissed through the radio, urgent and terrified. "He's marked you. He's using your reflection as a window." My heart slammed in my chest. I reached out with one shaking hand and flipped the mirror down. Darkness filled the cab again, but the presence didn't leave. Then the miner whispered, "Listen closely. This is the part you don't know yet." I held my breath. The gatekeeper didn't save you from the sealed one. A chill swept through me. He saved the sealed one from you. My pulse stopped. What? You crossed the boundary alive. You carried an ancient being across the tear without losing yourself. You survived something that kills nearly every living thing that attempts it. I said nothing, couldn't say anything. "You think you're the anchor," the miner whispered. "You're not." I swallowed hard. My voice came out as a rasp. "Then what am I?" Silence. A silence that tasted like a coming storm. The miner finally spoke. "You're the breach." The shard glowed white-hot. The engine roared on its own, and every tree in the forest bent toward my truck, as if bowing. When the forest bowed toward my truck, every instinct inside me screamed to run. But running where? Down this silent back road in a truck that was no longer fully mine. Into the woods, where something far older than any coal mine could be waiting, or simply into the darkness inside myself. A darkness that hadn't existed before that night, but now pulsed with the rhythm of another world, like a second heart beating beneath my ribs. The glowing shard sat on the seat beside me, heat radiating through the cab until the air shimmered. I reached for it once, but the warmth scorched the edges of my fingertips, not enough to burn the skin, but enough to feel like someone or something was warning me or reminding me. The dead miner's last words echoed like a fracture in my thoughts. "You're not the anchor, you're the breach." I tried to steady my breathing, but it came in shallow gulps. My pulse pounded against the inside of my skull as if trying to escape. Even the steering wheel felt wrong under my hands, warmer than it should have been, almost alive. This wasn't fear anymore. Fear was something that made sense, human, predictable. This was dread, a deeper, older instinct, the kind that warned early humans when something moved in the dark with intelligence instead of hunger. I took a slow breath. "All right," I whispered into the cab. "Tell me what that means." Silence, but not empty silence. Listening silence, the kind a predator uses when deciding if it should step closer or wait. Then, as if answering my thought rather than my words, the radio clicked softly. Static flowed through the speakers like a hush. Then a voice slipped through, strained, fading, but unmistakably the same dead miner. "Mercer, it's not over. They're coming." "Who?" I whispered. "The Watchers, the ones who guard the tear from the other side. They felt it when you crossed. They felt it when you drove into their world and survived. You opened something the gatekeepers couldn't close." I swallowed hard. "I didn't want this." "No one ever wants this," he said, "but someone always becomes it." The shard pulsed again, and a faint blue glow seeped into the cracked roads below, illuminating the lines like veins. It felt like the world was breathing through fissures in the asphalt. I didn't realize until that moment that my truck had begun to move forward on its own. Not fast, just inching. like it was being drawn toward something by a magnet. "Stop," I muttered, slamming my foot onto the brake. The pedal sank to the floor. Nothing. The truck continued rolling. "Stop!" The steering wheel pulsed under my palms, a heartbeat syncing with mine. The engine rumbled like a living thing. The cab lights flickered overhead. Then a voice emerged from the radio. Not the miner, not the woman, not the sealed one. A new voice, firm, resonant, alive. Mercer Lane. I froze. Hearing my full name from a voice I didn't know made every hair on my arms stand up. "You are in possession of contraband from the boundary realm. You will stop your vehicle immediately." For a moment, stupid hope sparked inside me. An authority, someone human, someone who knew what this was and could take it away. "Who is this?" I asked. The voice didn't hesitate. "Department of Interrealm Hazard Mitigation." My heart skipped. What?" "Pull the vehicle to the shoulder. It won't stop." "We know." I blinked hard, confusion and fear twisting together. "Who are you?" "We're the people who clean up what crosses when the gatekeepers fail." His tone wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional at all. It was the voice of a man who'd seen things, impossible things, long enough to lose the luxury of surprise. "Your name is Mercer Lane," he repeated. "Age 37, long-haul driver, emergency run on a closed highway, picked up an unscheduled manifest." "How do you know all this?" A brief pause. "Because you weren't the first, and you won't be the last, but you—" A crackle. Static tore the line apart. The voice returned, strained now, as if something was interfering. "Mercer, listen carefully. You cannot let the sealed one anchor itself to your world. Do you understand? You must—" The radio screamed. Not a person, not a machine. A shriek, feral, ancient, furious. The speakers blew out, smoke hissing from them. The cab plunged into silence, so sharp it felt violent. My breath came in ragged bursts. Something was standing in the road ahead. I didn't see it at first, just a dark column in the distance, but as the truck rolled closer, the shape sharpened. A man, tall, still, facing away from me, wearing a miner's coat from another century, helmet dented, back slumped, one arm hanging at an unnatural angle. The shard on the seat burned hot. My truck slowed on its own. "No," I whispered. "Not again. Not this." I reached for the wheel, for the brakes, anything that would give me control. But the truck moved like a marionette, strings pulled by invisible hands. A crack split across the asphalt beneath the man. Blue fire seeped upward. He turned, slowly, too slowly, and when he faced me there was nothing behind the helmet visor, but hollow blue light swirling where eyes should have been. The sealed one had found the living world, not fully, not yet, but enough to project fragments, echoes, shells. "Driver," the empty-eyed figure whispered, voice warped and metallic. "You opened the way." I shook my head, breath stuttering. "You're not real." "We are as real as you allow." The figure stepped closer. The road cracked beneath his boots. "You carried me across the threshold." "I didn't know." "You felt the pull." "No, you followed the rules." "I had to," I shouted, desperation flaring hot in my chest. It was the only way to survive. The figure leaned close to the windshield. "You survived because the gate wants you alive, because the tear wants to grow, because I want to come through." The ground trembled. Pine needles lifted from the forest floor. Birds shrieked and scattered in a frenzy. "You are the door, Mercer Lane, and once a door opens—" He raised his hand. The shard beside me pulsed violently. "It never truly closes." A blinding flash filled my vision. A violent jolt slammed through the cab. And then everything stopped. The road, the forest, the truck. Everything froze. For a moment, reality simply held its breath. Then a new voice spoke behind me, calm, human. "Mr. Lane?" I spun so fast my neck cracked. Behind my truck stood two people, neither spectral nor monstrous. A man in a worn leather jacket and a woman in a dark gray uniform with a badge I couldn't read. They weren't armed, but everything about their posture said they could be dangerous anyway. The woman stepped closer, lifting her hands in a slow, non-threatening motion. "I'm Agent Rowan. This is Agent Cade. We're here to help you." "Help?" I rasped, throat raw. "You have no idea what's happening." But the man shook his head. "We know exactly what's happening," he said. "We track it, contain it, prevent it." The woman's gaze dipped to the glowing shard on my seat. "And you," she said softly, "brought something back that isn't supposed to exist outside the gate." I swallowed hard. "You think I wanted this?" "No," she said, eyes sympathetic but firm. "But intention doesn't matter. What comes through chooses its vessel." I stiffened. "Vessel?" The man stepped closer to the truck window. His expression was grim. "Mr. Lane, the sealed one isn't the problem anymore." The ground trembled faintly. The blue cracks widened beneath the road. My pulse hammered. "Then what is?" The woman answered quietly. "What comes after a breach?" The wind stopped. The forest bent again, and the blue fissures glowed like veins of fire spreading under the world. "Mr. Lane," she said, voice tightening, "we need you to come with us, now, because whatever you freed—" The shard pulsed in my hand like a heartbeat. "Didn't come alone." A distant rumble echoed through the trees, like footsteps made by something too massive to fit between trunks. And as the morning sky began to dim, as if something dark rose above it, I realized the worst truth of all. I had brought the sealed one back, but it had brought something far older with it, something the gatekeepers feared. Something that wanted the breach wide open, and I was the only door it needed.